All right, Jacob Savidant is here today. How you doing, Jacob?
Doing great. How about you, Maddie?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Thanks so much for reaching out and wanting to come on. We haven't seen each other in a while. We kind of knew each other a little bit from the football world
Yep.
years ago, but I just want to say thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, Maddie. I was really looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. I guess we'll just jump right into your story. I'll let you take the reins. You can go start wherever you'd like.
Cool, man. So yeah, I guess the best place to start is at the very beginning. It makes it easier for all the kind of little bits that I'll kind of touch on. So yeah, it would be 2 years ago on December 21st. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with ALL. It's basically, there's a couple of different names for it, but it stands for acute lymphocytic leukemia. So basically, it's through the blood, through my stem cells and blood cells, stuff like that. So it's not kind of like your typical kind of like cancer thing where you can kind of do a surgery, have maybe like 6 months of chemo kind of deal. That's why it took the last 2 years to actually kind of get all the treatment and stuff going. So yeah, after I was diagnosed, they sent me to Halifax that same night. I went in. I was actually working that afternoon up at Moore's. My manager and my assistant manager, they both looked at me and they were like, "Man, you do not look healthy at all." Like I was anemic looking, like yellow. I had a bunch of like red spots in my skin. So they're like, "Hey, we'll pay you till 5 o'clock." It was around 2 o'clock. They were like, "Hey, go to the hospital." I was like, "Okay." Drove myself to the hospital. Um, I got there, went into emerge, went into triage, and I was like, I could barely breathe. I was like really bad shape, like sore all over. So they threw me in a wheelchair. We're like, "Hey, we're getting this guy in right away." Went and had a bunch of tests done. My girlfriend showed up. She's my ex-girlfriend now, but at the time she showed up and just kind of sat in the room with me, and she didn't really know what was going on. She had to get all gowned up and stuff because they had no idea what was actually going on. Probably an hour and a half later, they came back with some blood work and some tests and stuff, and we're like, "Hey, yeah, this is what we think it is. We think it's some sort of leukemia." I have at first I was kind of like, oh, okay. I don't really know like what this is, kind of what we're dealing with. Then immediately, my girlfriend called my mom, was like, "Hey, something's wrong. Like, get her to the hospital." So her dad called called her dad, and he went and picked my mom up, and basically from there was history. They got to the hospital a little bit later that evening. A couple hours later, they're like, "Hey, yeah, this is what we think it is. You're moving to Halifax." So a couple hours later, on the stretcher, getting into the ambulance, and I looked at my mom, and now, kind of looking back on it now, it's kind of I don't know, it's kind of a weird kind of quirk, I guess, that I've got. I don't really worry about things anymore. So I just kind of threw my arms up and I was like, "Road trip." Looked at my mom, and she looked and she started to laugh, and she was kind of like, I don't think she was taking it a little bit harder than I was, because I really didn't know what I was in for. So I was like, "Hey, let's just do it." So they moved me to Halifax. I started treatment the next day. I was stuck in the hospital at the Victoria General in Halifax for a month. Got chemo pretty much every day.
So not to cut you off, but did you
Oh
like
yeah,
take an ambulance all the way there?
yeah. They put me in the back of the ambulance, and yeah, a few hours later we pulled up to the QE2, same ambulance, and yeah, went over in the ambulance, and
So were they were just like checking your vitals the whole time? Is that why they took the ambulance over?
yeah, I think they were monitoring me because when they actually first looked at my blood work, a lot of people don't know, kind of, that's kind of, I've learned so much in the past 2 years about all the different little, like, your vitals and your blood work and all that stuff. My platelets, basically the thing that keeps your blood, when it helps it clot. So if you cut yourself, it helps, like, clot super quick. The average person, their platelets should be, I think it's around like 200,000. So on, like, when you get a blood tested, say your platelets are around 200, because every one counts for 1,000. So like one equals 1,000. Um, Mine were at about 16 that day. So
Okay.
I could have nicked myself on something and bled to death, like without even knowing, and stuff like that. So they kept my blood work and stuff fairly consistent every day. But yeah, they were monitoring me the whole time in the back of the ambulance on the way over.
Wow. So you get there a few hours later
Yeah, I got
and
there a few hours later. They were like, "Hey, we want to run some more tests on you." They brought me to the QE2 first, just because they wanted to make sure they had a bed for me at the Victoria General, because they knew I was going to be there for a while. So I was there at the QE2 for a couple hours. They did some more blood tests and stuff. Then once they confirmed they had a room for me, they moved me over to the VG, and I was there for the next month. My mom stayed in the room with me. They moved like a little cot just into the corner of the room. That way she didn't have to worry about staying in a hotel or anything. So yeah, they put me up in a room and she stayed with me. And thank God she had her health coverage at the time, because it covered our room and a little TV that I could watch, or else I'd be pretty bored out of my mind. Uh,
right.
but yeah, so that got there basically 2 o'clock, probably on the 22nd. And that afternoon, I started treatment. So from the 22nd till about the beginning of January, I had chemo pretty much every day. And I had a couple of what are called intrathecals. They're basically like a spinal tap every 2 or 3 days every week. Um, and yeah, after I was done with that, we moved to thank God for the army. That was one of my biggest probably saves in Halifax, because being a reservist, I got in contact with some of my higher ups, and our orderly room, who basically deals with all our pay and paperwork and everything. They managed to get us an apartment in basically one of the old like military housing little districts, and they put us up for an apartment for the month. I think it was like $400 for the month.
Wow.
um, so yeah, we were very lucky that way. So I'm definitely very thankful that they put me up like that, and we stayed in Halifax for another couple of weeks. I got some more. I had radiation for those 2 weeks. That's why we had to stay for the extra little bit. But they didn't want to keep me as an inpatient at that point, because I didn't have to get chemo every single day. Um, so we stayed in the apartment for 2 or 3 weeks. And after that, we came home, and they told us that we were going to have to go to Halifax I think it was every week, for chemo until they could figure something out here on the island, which was very costly at first.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, with the bridge and gas and everything. Uh, but from there, we moved a little bit further into it a couple weeks later, or a couple cycles later, I guess. One cycle lasted about 3 weeks for me. So two cycles later, maybe three, they managed to set it up here in the island, where I could get my treatment and stuff here mainly on the island, and then just go to Halifax every 3 weeks or whenever needed, just for checkups and check-ins with the doctor,
Right.
um, which made
So
things so much easier.
right. Um so what did it feel like? Like what did it feel like, and did like how did they explain it to you, and how did it start? Like when you first started it, like what was that
Um,
whole process like?
when it started, it was just kind of like my doctor came in. She came in. She had a couple of colleagues, and there was a training doctor. So I had probably 2 or 3 doctors and a nurse in the room. So it was kind of freaky the first time, because it's like I've never met these people before. It's like, okay, what's going on? So they laid it out, and I remember my mom and I were sitting there. She had the chair in the corner of the room, and I remember it very, very vividly. It was basically along the lines, they walked in and said, "All right, so bad news." I was like, okay, here we go. What's going to happen? And she was like, "Okay, you're going to be here for a month." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's like not even remotely bad." Like, I was thrilled when she said that. I thought it was going to be, okay, you're going to be here for like 6 months kind of deal.
Right.
And so they gave us a calendar and they were like, here's your schedule and stuff. So then whenever they brought the chemo in, kind of hooked it up the first time, I already had probably 2 or 3 IVs in, because they put one in from Charlottetown that I had in my arm. And then they put another one in down to my wrist on the same arm, just to kind of try to keep it so that I could at least use one arm. And when they hooked it up for the first time, they were like, okay, we're going to give you some like nausea meds or like anti-nausea meds, stuff like that, just because that's one of the main, I guess, symptoms, side effects of having chemotherapies. You get really like nausea, stuff like that. Um, and it was kind of scary the first time, because it's like I don't know what to expect, kind of deal. Plus I had to at the same time have some blood transfusions and platelets and transfusions and stuff like that, just to bring my levels up high enough so that they wouldn't have to worry about the chemo dropping those too much. So it was kind of freaky. You got all these like bags hung around you, you got a bunch of like kind of wires hung up. I was kind of like freaking out at first. I was like, okay, hopefully this isn't what it's like for the whole month. Like hopefully I can eventually start easing off of some of this stuff. But yeah, for the first few days, I was still in pretty bad shape the first few days, because I actually, the bottom part of my left lung had actually collapsed, because what happened was my spleen doubled in size and took up the bottom half of where the lung should be. So I was still in quite a bit of pain from that. I was on oxygen, so I didn't feel great going into it. So then the chemo doesn't make you feel any better. So for the first few days, I felt pretty tired, just exhausted, feeling nauseous, just really didn't feel good at all. Um, but after the first few days, I started kind of feeling better. Like my spleen kind of returned to normal. My lungs started filling out again, so I started to feel a bit better. Started to try to walk up and down the hall. My nurses and try to get me some exercise. Um, the one thing that a lot of people don't realize with chemotherapy is what it does. Basically, the chemo kills off. It doesn't just kill off the cancer cells; it kills off everything. So that's why a lot of times, like after the first 3 or 4 days, I had like a big beard, long hair, everything going on. My hair started to come out, like fall out. I was pulling my beard basically out. I lost probably a good 15, 20 pounds in a week.
Wow.
And I was eating about 2,000 calories, 2,500 calories or more a day, and still losing weight. Like it just kills everything. So you feel really, really bad after, getting the first little bit of it. Um, then not saying you get used to it, because no one ever gets used to something like that, but it kind of gets a little bit easier when you understand kind of what it's doing, like why it's doing it. You're not as kind of hesitant to say like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Because you realize what it's actually doing, how it's helping you. But yeah, not a good feeling for the first little while, and I wasn't really in a I don't even know. It's kind of hard to explain, but I was in a good place. Like I was in a good state of mind. Like I was like, hey, let's do it. Nothing I can do about it. I have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, it's like I really don't want to have to do this at the same time. Like you never really want to do it. Um,
Right. It's
so
like you don't have a choice, but if you had a choice.
exactly, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was getting the intrathecals done. I was getting those done a couple times, 3 times a week. So I was really sore like the whole month of doing it. So I was in my bed quite a bit. I wasn't up too much. Sometimes I try to sit up in the chair like for supper or something like that, just to give my back and my tailbone a bit of a break from laying down all day. Um, but yeah, the first month in the hospital was probably the roughest on my body, like physically. But at the same time, I was probably more mentally like sound positive at the time, because I was like, hey, I've got my mom here. My aunt drove over sometimes and she would stay for a few days. The nurses were always, coming in, like checking in. One of my nurses she was great. She brought me cookies one day. She made homemade cookies and brought me a plate of cookies. And when you bring a guy like me cookies, it's like, you know, you're happy like for the rest of the day because you have cookies. You can't not be happy having homemade cookies. So
Yeah.
yeah, that the first month was definitely kind of a roller coaster. um and then after we got home, it started to kind of, where I noticed my mental health started to kind of slip a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm the kind of guy, I love to stay busy. I hate being sedentary, not doing anything or not being able to do anything. So I was off work for 6 months. So for the first week or two that we got home, I didn't go outside. I went for maybe a walk with my mom every couple of days. I was just kind of sitting at home, like not doing anything. Which definitely, I could tell you right now, it is not a good way to start off, especially when you're that, for anyone. Like if you ever know anyone or ever have it, like if anyone comes to you for advice and says, hey, what's a good way to, try to stay like positive and active and mentally healthy, definitely do not tell them to just like relax for 2 weeks and do nothing. Because the more you can keep your mind busy, way better for you. Because when I'd sit at home and I'd be in my head like half the day and just
Yeah.
thinking like, hey, like what's going to happen next kind of deal, or like what should I have done differently, what could I have done differently. I honestly, I felt guilty. And I know I shouldn't have, like, but it was just from being in that kind of mental state that it was like, hey, if I had done something differently, would this have happened kind of deal. um so I got home, I was sedentary, hardly did anything. And then my mom, she would try to, boost me up, kind of, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go do something, let's go for a drive, even just to get out of the house. And after I started doing that, it's like, okay, I started to pick up a little bit, started to feel a little bit better. And then as soon as I could go back to work, I was like, hey, I want to come back to work so bad. Like, even if you can only give me 10 hours a week, it's better than nothing. I just need to be out doing something productive. Um, and that was the hardest bit, was just not being able to be productive.
Mm.
Because like I said, I'm that kind of person. When I'm not productive, I'm like just a whole like out of whack. My whole day feels weird. Like I need to have something that I've done that feels productive.
Right. I think most people are like that too. I think, like, whether they realize it or not, I think just as humans, like, we need to be productive and we need to yeah, we need to do things. We need to get out, we need to socialize with others, we need to not isolate. Like, I think this pandemic kind of
Oh,
highlighted that.
big time, big time. And that, when I just kind of gotten used to being able to be social and go back to work and stuff again, in 2019. And then boom, it's like beginning of 2020. Geez, it like threw me for another like loop, because I was just like getting back 20 hours a week, 15 hours a week at work. I was able to go back, start working at the regiment again, like down with the army. I was out like socializing with my friends a bunch, like going to see family and stuff. And then boom, March hits and it's like everything just goes to hell.
Yeah. Everything.
So definitely, definitely made it a lot harder to kind of stay busy.
Right. So, um, so you come back and you're in kind of a not great mindset, and then eventually you start doing stuff again. Where does kind of like your treatment and stuff go from there?
So treatment kind of, because easiest way to probably explain it, um, for my treatment, the way the protocol was what they called it, the way the protocol went, there's four like phases to the treatment. So the first phase was the month that I was in Halifax in the hospital. Then the second phase was the radiation and stuff, where I was in Halifax in the apartment for a couple of weeks. And then phase 3 started when I came home, which is basically, I think that was what they called the continuation phase kind of deal, where it was like the main, just kind of almost like cleanup kind of maintenance of making sure that like the cancer kind of stays away. Because I was in remission at the end of phase 1. So like the cancer was gone, the major bits were gone, like I wasn't in any like major danger anymore. But then it started phase 3. So that was when I started here in the island. I was at the hospital a couple times a week. And at that point, I didn't have really a good grasp yet still of kind of how long and how kind of monotonous it would start to feel every week going. It's like, okay, Monday morning blood work, Tuesday treatment, Wednesday treatment kind of deal. So it took up a good like chunk of my week to get that done. And I didn't usually feel great after getting treatment on those days. So I'd come home and just chill. I couldn't work after I was done treatment that day, or I wouldn't really feel like going to see anyone. So that's kind of when I really started to slip mentally, was
Yeah.
when I was, it was just like, I felt like I didn't have any freedom at all at that point. Like I'd work maybe a Friday night, maybe a Saturday or a Sunday. And then the rest of the time I wasn't usually doing anything because I didn't feel good enough to go do anything. So that was kind of a rough bit. And then from phase 3, you move into phase 4, which basically started kind of at the beginning of this year, I think. Because it was supposed to be this last phase, they called it, I think, the maintenance phase. It's like a huge, long, it basically, I think it worked out to be 72 weeks total is what it's supposed to be. Which when I heard that, I was like, oh, okay, this is this is going to be a long, long time, just kind of getting back to normal, adjusting to this. I was used to it by then. But then we started to run into some problems at the beginning of the phase where they couldn't get an IV in anymore because my veins were just basically fed up with it and not having any more of it. And they couldn't get a good IV in. So there was one day at the hospital that I think it took us about an hour and a half to get one IV in. And
Wow.
about 12 pokes. So it had to, and I think each nurse is only allowed to do it like 2 times or 3 times. So we went through quite a few nurses trying to get one in. When we finally got one in, it was just in the back of my hand, tiny little one. And they were like, don't move your hand, please. Like, we just got it. We don't want to lose it. So after that, they decided to put a PICC line in my arm. Basically, it's kind of like a more permanent IV. It runs, basically, they put it in kind of the crook of your elbow, or a little bit higher, I guess, just kind of in between that around your bicep, I guess. And it runs a line up your arm and closer to your heart, just so it's like a more direct kind of way to get any IV kind of infusions.
Right.
And that was just because they didn't want to have to keep trying every week for like an hour to try to get an IV in. So when they put that guy in, made things way, way easier. Definitely when they put it in, I vaguely remember when I walked out, I just like just let it this big sigh, just like, oh my God, like finally I'm not gonna have to worry about getting poked and stuff a bunch anymore. It's just gonna be all right. Take the bandage off, hook it up, let it run for a couple hours, boom, put a bandage on it, go home kind of deal. So way, way easier than trying to get the IVs in. And treatment still at this point, still kind of like once, twice a week.
So it takes a
And
couple hours, eh? So you sit there while it runs in a couple hours?
yep, each bag ran, sometimes I would have a bag that'll run for half hour. Sometimes I'd have one that'll run for 15 minutes. And then there was one that would run for about an hour. But then sometimes you're sitting in between, because when you check in, you go sit in the chair. They hook you up with like the kind of like the IV saline drip bag, and you wait and you wait until they mix your chemo bag, and then it comes in, hooks up, and then you got to wait for the other one to be mixed, hang it up. So it'd take probably 20 minutes, half hour to mix each bag. So sometimes you're there for an hour before something even actually gets hooked up and runs. Um, so my mom would usually come with me, and we'd spend a good couple hours there, sometimes just playing cards. Sometimes I'd throw a movie on my iPad. I'd set it up in my little stand, throw my earbuds in, and just kind of chill out for a little bit. Um, there were times where I'd have to get an injection in my hip uh, for a certain drug, but on certain days, certain drugs can't be mixed within certain time periods of each other. Like they can't be like run through like the body. So I'd have to take the one bag, wait 4 hours between that one bag and the injection, and then get the injection, then wait 15 minutes, and then get another bag. So sometimes those days, like I'd be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, wouldn't get home till 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Um,
Oh,
so yeah, some of the days were pretty long.
put in a full day's work there.
Yeah, I know. Eh?
So,
um,
um, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
oh no, so I was just gonna say, at the end of this, they basically said, like a couple of weeks ago, when I was finishing up, they're like, when you're all done with this, you're pretty much just going to be able to do this all yourself. You're not going to need any nurses doing this for you anymore. And
You got it
I
all
was like,
figured out.
yeah, just, okay, do it, hook it up. Okay, this one's for this one.
I got this, guys. Go take a break. I'll pour it
Yeah, exactly. Just,
in.
yeah, bring me some like cookies or some stuff like that, and we'll be fine. We'll be all set. There's payment.
That's funny. Um, so was this like the side effects like of not feeling very good, was that kind of consistent throughout the whole time of your treatment?
Um, Sometimes there would be like it kind of depend on the day. Like certain days I would have like I said earlier, certain bags on certain days. So certain chemo drugs would make me feel certain ways. Like there's one that I took, it was like a 15-minute bag that would run, but for the rest of the day, my legs and my arms felt like I just did like an intense upper body, like or like super heavy weight workout, like squats and push-ups and stuff like that, where my arms and my legs were just like jello. But I had literally done nothing except sit in a chair for an hour that day. Where there were others where I would feel completely fine afterwards. And there were some that would just make me feel really kind of spacey and like not nauseous, but just kind of spaced out. Like I couldn't really focus on things very well. So fairly like they were fairly consistent, which like whatever bag would do what for a side effect. Um, but I eventually it started to kind of get a little bit easier because I knew kind of what to expect with each bag, so I could kind of prepare myself for whichever one I'm getting. I kind of know how I'm going to feel afterwards. Um, and then, like I said, there were some that literally had no effect, and I'd feel fine afterwards, and I'd want to go for a walk afterwards or go do something afterwards. Um, but yeah, it started to get kind of draining after the first even 6 months, just kind of doing the same thing and feeling the same ways all the time, kind of deal.
Right. No, I imagine it would be very, like you said, monotonous. And after a while, you would just like, is this ever going to stop?
Yeah, that was definitely a thought, and I would sometimes before I'd go to bed, I'd go say goodnight to my mom, and we'd stand there for 20 minutes, and I'd just kind of like vent of just kind of like, hey, like, and she would just sit there and listen, and kind of, she'd put in her 2 cents and her input, and um, she was definitely kind of my rock, so to speak, to kind of keep me from going too far one way or the other. because she was there to just kind of let me veg and talk if I needed to. Um, and just kind of speak my mind of, what I was feeling that day or how I was feeling. Cause, you don't want to do that to, if you're going to hang out with some friends, you don't want to, be that guy that's like, hey guys, I had a really like bad day, not in a good mood kind of thing. Or like, hey, this is really draining. It's like, you want to go and have a good time with your friends. And not that I would ever, count them out that they wouldn't want to listen or know what's going on. Cause like that's what your friends are there for. Like they want to know how you're doing. They want to make sure you're doing okay. But um, my mom was definitely the one person I could always kind of just vent to. And it made things a lot easier, especially getting into kind of the dog days or what I call it, of the treatment, like coming in like this past year, um, especially with the pandemic. um, I could definitely just know she was always going to be there and just speak my mind kind of deal. And um, yeah, I couldn't thank her enough. um, but yeah, definitely got monotonous. And when it gets to that point, it's almost hard to kind of snap yourself out of if you're in kind of a mode, I guess, or a routine of knowing it's going to be like that. It's kind of hard to snap yourself out of it and be like, okay, don't worry, it'll eventually be over. Just kind of hang tough, stay the course kind of deal. It's kind of hard to do that on your own, but then once you kind of have someone that kind of gives you the little, the nudge or a little bit of a kick in the ass to kind of get yourself out of it, it definitely gets a bit easier.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That's yeah, that's awesome that your mom was there for you. I think that's super important to have someone you trust to vent to, especially in, such a serious situation.
Definitely. It definitely helps.
Um, so leading into this year, was it less treatment this year, like the fourth phase, was it less treatment or was it around the same?
Just a little bit less. Like instead of having to go on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for chemo, it was just on Tuesdays now, for the past year or so. And it was a little bit like they would lower the doses of certain things, so it was a little bit less intense. Um, but at the same time, while I'm doing the treatment, I was also on a bunch of like medications and stuff, a bunch of vitamins. So I was taking stuff like vitamin D and calcium and stuff just to keep my body like healthy. I took a lot of magnesium to like stop my muscles from cramping up because I wasn't as active doing stuff. Like I remember when I first got back to work at Moore's, just trying to fill out like an alteration card for someone with my pen, my fingers would start to cramp up from writing because I hadn't written anything with a pen or a pencil for like 6 months or more. So it was just kind of hard to do that. But with all the medications and all that stuff at home, like I was on steroids for basically the first 5 days of every kind of cycle. I'd be on steroids, but they gave me like super bad heartburn and all that stuff. So even though the treatment, like the chemo itself, kind of eased off, it didn't really make it any easier at home taking the medications and stuff. Because the steroids would kill me. Like my face, like I've put on, they figured it out that I've actually put on probably close to 30 extra pounds in just water weight from the steroids alone. So now that I'm done of them, don't have to take them anymore, I'm hoping that starts to kind of work out, um, because it kind of made it a lot harder on my body to do stuff when I put on, an extra 30 pounds. 30 pounds isn't, people don't think it's a lot when you just lift it, with a dumbbell or something like that. But when you think of having 30 pounds extra on your body, like just alone, it puts a lot more stress on your body than you would think 30 pounds would.
Yeah.
So yeah, it got easier treatment side, but never got really any easier, like medication side, because I had to keep taking those no matter what.
And what were the steroids for?
I think they mainly said it was for just to kind of keep my body, give that my body an extra edge to kind of keep itself kind of healthy, like to keep up with the intensity of the treatment and kind of what it can do to your body, just to boost everything up a little bit. And I think it probably boosted a little bit of the treatment itself, like the effects of how it was going to actually kill off cells and like how it was going to actually do its job. Um, but definitely to keep your body in more of a little bit of a more um, a stronger physical shape for your immune system and all that too.
Right. So when you were first diagnosed with
Mhm.
this, did they discuss like survival rates and like how effective the treatment is gonna like is on average and all that stuff?
Um, I honestly don't really remember a whole lot if they did or not. I know at some point we had talked about it, about the um, basically like with the protocol and after the protocol, what the chances of like relapsing are, what, survival rates and stuff like that. I think they said it was something after I got through a certain point of the protocol, the numbers jump way up of where your like your survivability rate and then your relapse rate drops quite a bit once you like reach a certain point in the protocol. And once I hit that point, my doctor, my hematologist that was here at the time, Dr. Ash, he explained it with me and basically said, "Hey, you've hit this point. We're past this point. You've had this much done. It definitely boosts your chances of this and lessens this kind of deal." So, um, not that I really worried about it too much because I was like, hey, I always kind of tried to keep the mindset of, hey, it's going to be fine. Nothing else is going to happen once you're done. Because I didn't want to have to be thinking about, oh my God, what if, basically all the what ifs.
Right.
Um, but yeah, right at the beginning, I don't think they talked too much about it just because they wanted to make sure I got through the first bit just, you know, as is, because I was in pretty rough shape going into the hospital. Um, Probably a lot worse shape than some people went in. Definitely. I definitely thank them for what they did. Because there was a lot going on that I didn't realize. Because when before I actually went to the hospital the first time, uh, or I guess that time to get, like when I got diagnosed, I had gone to the hospital twice just because I thought, like, at first I thought I had pulled a muscle or something where my lung had collapsed, because I was going to the gym sometimes twice a day, at least 6 days a week. I was like a fitness nut at the time, and I went to the hospital a couple times. They're like, "Yeah, I think you just pulled a muscle," or they said possibly an inflamed diaphragm. Basically, I what it sounded like was something to do with just maybe my lung had bumped into something or something was just irritated. Then after it didn't go away, and I started to get like really weird feeling, I was starting to look weird, like really anemic, like just not healthy. I went to my family doctor, um, and I didn't actually even see my doctor. I saw he was a training physician, so I went in and I didn't see him, but I saw someone that he was training at the time. And from the tests that they gave me, um, I had explained to them how I was sore, how I like, the breathing, uh, all the little red spots in my skin. They were like, "Yeah, we're gonna send you for some blood work. Uh, when you go in, we think it could possibly be asthma or arthritis." No, yeah, arthritis. No, asthma and arthritis are two completely different. But yeah, I get the two of them mixed up all the time. Arthritis, sorry, not asthma. But yeah, so they thought it was arthritis, sent me in for blood work. I was going to go for blood work the day that I actually got sent home from work early. And that's when I went in. They're like, "Yeah, this is bad. This is not good." And then that's when they told me what they thought it was. So I had done quite a bit of trying to, figure out what it was on my own, trying to go to the hospital to my doctor and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of scary.
Right. Yeah, I imagine. And then was that sort of the thing, like when you said you were like looking back when you go to like the dark place, was that sort of the thing that you would look back at, like, oh, I would maybe if I went to the doctor earlier, or if I was more whatever, like,
Yeah, a little more proactive, I guess. Because I can be pretty stubborn. Like when it comes to anything like that, any like physical injuries, stuff like that, I can be kind of stubborn, like especially like through football, stuff like that. Little
yeah, yeah.
things I was always,
You
oh
have to
no,
be when you play football though.
I know exactly, right? You know, oh yeah, you can't be like,
Constantly
oh
getting into car
coach,
crashes.
yeah, yeah, you can't be like, oh coach, my knee hurts. Okay, go sit on the bench then. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so I kind of had that kind of thing where I was a little bit more stubborn than I probably should have been.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I went when I did go and get checked out. It was like, okay, hopefully nothing serious. But yeah, definitely when I look back on stuff like that, it's like, should I have gone earlier? And then it's like, no, you went at the right time, because if you had gone earlier, maybe they wouldn't have known what it was. So
Yeah.
I try to kind of look at both sides of it, instead of
Hmm.
always just like the should I or like could I have
Hmm.
kind of thing. It's like, no, you went, everything kind of worked out how it did for the
Yeah,
right reasons.
yeah. I think that's like the right way to look at and the healthy way to look at it. I think like, um, you never know. Like you said, like maybe if you went sooner, like they wouldn't have seen it, or you never know how it would have worked out, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting though, because I think a lot of guys and men are like that. Like they'll have like a pain, like, oh, it's fine or whatever. And then, but at the same time too, like, you did work out 6 days a week. So it could have been you could have been in your diaphragm. So
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was kind of thinking at first. I was like, oh yeah, I just pulled a muscle in my ribs or something, like, lifting or running or something. Because I was like, my workout routines were pretty heavy. Like I'd be there for 3 hours sometimes in the morning before I went to work, and then I would go again in the evening with my mom after work. So I
your
had
mom
no
sounds
doubt
like a
of.
trooper.
Oh yeah, she's a pretty tough lady. Um, and that's the thing too. This isn't even the first time she's really gone through me in the hospital either. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I had bacterial meningitis, so it was like basically fluid kind of build up around the brain. So I had a brain surgery when I was like 7 or 8. So this isn't even like her first rodeo for this. So she's been through quite a bit with me, but it was funny the way she said it. I never do things half-assed. I always do things 110%, no matter what it is. If it's sickness, if it is, whatever. So I always have to do things to 110%. So I guess that counts for something.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, it was definitely she's definitely had her time through the ringer, I guess.
do you remember that surgery when you were 7?
Uh, Not really, because I was actually it started out with like the flu, and then kind of progressed into that, or what we thought was the flu, and because it was all like flu-like symptoms. Then we went to the hospital, and um, I got like used life flight or whatever over to Halifax to the IWK, and I was in a coma for 3 days, so I didn't really remember a whole lot until after I actually kind of like came out of it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I don't really remember the surgery or anything, but I remember all the follow up stuff, because that was hard. That was like, um, it was basically almost like learning how to do everything again, like how to, walking again, like reading and writing, kind of stuff like that. Like I had to go through like speech therapy and stuff, physio and all that. It was kind of hard. But when you're 7 or 8 years old, you're kind of like, oh yeah, you don't kind of realize how severe it really is, because you're still a kid, right? You have other things you want to be worrying about. You want to be at home watching cartoons in the morning, eating your bowl of cereal, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
really, you're not, yeah,
You're
you
not thinking
chill
long
out.
term. You're just like, oh, I'll just go to the therapy or whatever, and then I'll go do my thing.
Exactly, right? You go
It's
back
just
to
my
your
mom will
room
take me
and
somewhere and I'll do it. Then I'll get out of there as soon as possible.
yeah, exactly. Or right, go back to your room, watch some, cartoons or something.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like now looking back on that compared to now, definitely I had like no idea how severe, like how intense it really was. And uh, yeah, definitely, I'm definitely more aware of how, like, and back then too, I wasn't, my mental health was like, oh God, probably like 160%. Like I wasn't thinking about a thing. I was
Yeah, yeah.
enjoying myself. Like life was just great. And then now
Yeah.
I look back on it and I was like, wow, was I lucky not to be in a rough spot then.
Hmm.
Especially now looking back on kind of like seeing how I've been over the past 2 years and how hard sometimes it was to deal with it then. I couldn't imagine trying to deal with it as a 7 or 8 year old kid.
Yeah. Right.
Because especially as a kid, at that time too, you're not always like telling your parents everything kind of deal. Like you don't want to just open up and be like, you know, mom, this is like I don't feel good or whatever. You're just like when your parents ask you, it's like, how you feeling? Good.
Yeah.
Can I go watch cartoons now? Like
Yeah,
kind of,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah. But yeah, definitely looking back on it, I would not wish any of that on anyone. But like if you're positive and you've kind of got the positive outlook from the start, it makes things a lot easier.
Right.
100%.
Has this changed your perspective on life?
Yep, definitely. There are a lot of things. I was actually talking about this not long ago at work with a couple guys there and with my mom. And I used to be, when I would go to work, how everyone's like, oh yeah, I have to go to work now kind of deal. It's like, not everyone's kind of like happy with, if they're not doing a job they're super happy with, they're like, oh man, I got to go to work now. Really? Like, when is this over? Like, when can I go home kind of deal? Now it's like my whole outlook on it is I get to go to work
Yeah. Yeah.
because not everyone comes out of it like I did, and not everyone gets to go back to work like I did, and especially not as early as I did. Like, you got to go back to work 6 months after starting chemotherapy. Not everyone's probably pushing to do that. Everyone's probably, like, most people are probably wanting to, just chill out, deal with that first before having to deal with, work life again and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, definitely when it comes to going to work, like I get to go to work. I love my job. I love what I do. Um, yes, everyone has bad days at work, and I'm not going to deny that I don't either. Um, but yeah, definitely something like that. And now, uh, now that I'm finished treatment, I actually didn't think I was going to be done until about June or July of next year. Um, but it would have been, I finished on the 22nd. So I got the call about 2 or 3 weeks before that it was going to be my last cycle. And that was kind of when it hit me, was like, okay, I've always been a very science based kind of person. I've always kind of fallen on scientific fact first before kind of going to the whole faith kind of thing. Um, but I think after that, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit, saying that, yeah, there's no way science is just going to, yeah, there's a scientific explanation, obviously, but to have something like that happen at just the perfect time, for Christmas, for the new year, and to have it all basically end exactly 2 years from when it started,
Yeah.
there's something kind of, it's a little more than just coincidence, I think.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
because that's
there's,
exactly 2 years, right?
yeah,
The
it's
22nd was the
exactly,
first day.
yeah, exactly 2 years. And so when that happened, I was like, yeah, I think something a little bit more is happening here. Not that I'm, completely 100% now, um, converted kind of, or whatever the correct word would be. Like I'm still going to rely on my a bit of science, but at the same time, I do definitely believe that there's now, there's a little bit of something that someone's either watching over me or there's something kind of happening.
Right. There's a little bit of unexplained out there.
Yeah, definitely. Something that I don't think anyone will ever really be able to put a finger on and say, this is exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely had some of those situations unfold as well. With, some of the things that I've been through. It's just like, you can look back and say, well, it just is coincidence. It just is. But then you can also, at the time, it just seems like, how the fuck could this possibly just be coincidence? Like, it's
Exactly.
like, the way things work out is funny sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of spooky when you think about it, and it kind of spooked me at first because I was like, whoa. It took me like a full probably 2 days to kind of realize, okay, this is going to be like the last of this. And then when I looked at the calendar and I figured out that it was going to be like the 21st and the 22nd that were going to be like basically my last days, I was like, okay, yeah, this is pretty spooky, but it's pretty kick ass at the same time. That exactly 2 years.
It's crazy, man. So it's the 29th today when we're recording this.
Yep.
How have you been feeling since then?
Oh, I've been feeling great. Still, like I said, kind of earlier, kind of before we kicked everything off, I still haven't kind of fully settled in to the
Yeah.
realization that
Yeah.
everything's kind of like done now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm feeling great. Like right now, I'm still, uh, I guess when it comes to my like fitness and stuff, I'm still trying to kind of develop that back because I was at the gym for a little while. Probably would have been, I guess, a month ago or so now, before kind of the circuit breaker kind of hit, and everything closed down again for the 2 weeks. I was at the gym pretty regularly, so I felt good then, but I haven't gone back to the gym just yet. Kind of waiting for everything to kind of die down again, just kind of see where things are going, because I don't want to get back into the routine and be like, yeah, feeling great, and then have the gym close down again and be like, oh shit, like can't do
Right.
it anymore.
Yeah.
So I've been going for some walks with my mom in the evenings or in the morning. Um, I try to do just a little bit of fitness here and there, like, some push-ups, sit-ups, squats, just easy stuff like that I can do around the house. Do I even still have them? Yes, I do. I have some resistance bands that I use as well, just to kind of, do a little bit of, um, I guess, mock weightlifting, some flies and stuff like that. But
Right.
I feel
Right. Yeah.
great. Physically, I feel great. Like mentally, I'm just like, I don't think I've been in a better place in the past 2 years than right now.
Right.
And
Cloud
especially over
nine.
Christmas. Oh yeah, cloud nine. Like, you know, um, especially over Christmas, because Christmas was pretty good. I got to spend it with some family. Um, got some pretty cool stuff. And just, now that I'm kind of in the clear, I can focus on, like, I can focus on what have been trying to focus on for the past 2 years without any interruptions, without any big, hurdles and stuff. Um, which is definitely very uplifting, because when when you have a goal set and then basically you have to hit like the pause button on life for 2 years, it's like, well, shit, this isn't fun.
Yeah.
So now
It
that
can
I
be
can
very
actually,
frustrating.
frustrating. And that's kind of a funny, just little side note on that. Every week or every 3 weeks, I guess, when I would go in to see the doctor here on the island, um, you do like a little chart basically to say like, how are you feeling? Like there's a bunch of questions, kind of a 0 to 10 thing, 0 being the best you feel, 10 being the worst you feel, whether it be with like nausea, vomiting, whatever it may be, breathing, stuff like that. And then there's always a little thing at the bottom that says other. And certain weeks that I was really not feeling it, really in kind of a bad place, I would write on the little thing and say frustration 10. because
Yeah.
just because it's like, if I write that on there, at least I can talk about it and they can kind of see where I'm coming from. Because not that nurses and doctors don't always see where a patient is coming from, but sometimes you get into such a routine. And when it's like, hey, and they ask how you're feeling, it's like, hey, how are you feeling? And it's like, yeah, feeling good, or hey, not feeling too great. You don't want to sit there and kind of elaborate and go on for, 20 minutes about it. But at least to just kind of make them aware that things may not be going good, just so that they're kind of like,
Yes.
they kind of see it and they're like, hey, something's off. Like, if they want to bring it up, they can. If they just kind of want to like chill, they can, whatever. But at least they're made aware of it. So that was one thing that
Yes.
I would always try to put down if I could, um, if I was feeling a little down or whatever, do that. But yeah, over the past 2 weeks, I've been like rocking it, feeling it, like just,
Woo.
oh yeah, like, oh, it was great. And just knowing that from now on, no, I don't have to talk about it anymore. People don't have to be like, so how is things going? Like, how's treatment going? I don't
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
talk about that anymore. Because as much as, yes, I want to keep people informed of, what's going on, how I'm doing,
You don't
when
want to
it's the
give any
same.
more of your life to it.
Exactly. And when people are asking me the same questions sometimes, or like not the same people, but when you get, people you haven't seen for a while and they're like, hey, so how's everything going? How's treatment? And it's like, good. After you get it from like the 10th or 12th person, it
Yeah.
kind of gets to the point where you're like, yes, I will let you know how I'm feeling, but I don't want to keep talking about it, because you want to take a break from it.
Yeah. Let's just talk about sports.
Yeah, talk about anything. Like,
Yeah.
it's like now, like
Something
when,
else.
yeah, it's like now with the pandemic, when everyone, like, it seems one of the main topics of the day is always, hey, like, how many new cases we got, or what's happening with the vaccine, or what's, whatever's
Yeah.
going on with COVID. It's like, I just want to take a break. Let's talk about like Star Wars, or talk about whatever. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
what'd you have for lunch? Like,
Yeah. 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 No, that makes sense. Like you're just so like engulfed in that world where it's like I just want to talk about something else. Like, need a break for a few minutes.
yeah, definitely.
Um, what is the biggest things you think that helped you through this time?
Definitely. Um, well, there's definitely a few big things, but I'll try to keep it as, brief as possible, I guess, without going on with like a whole story about it. But number one, definitely having like people around you, like like I said earlier, my mom, my buddies, my friends, even people that I'm not super close with, they would check in on me and just be like, "Hey, how's things going? Like, how are you feeling?" Like, that is sometimes all I needed, just to kind of kick myself in the ass and just be like, hey, there's a lot worse things that could be happening, and there's probably people that are going through a lot worse things right now. So like,
Yeah.
suck it up. It's like, hey, okay, cool. So yeah, having people around you, that could kind of keep you, on that straight path, um, definitely helps. The one thing I actually started doing was keeping busy, but not just with like walks and stuff like that. I started cooking a lot more. I get in the kitchen and I would watch like a YouTube video on how to make something, and I'd be like, "Hey, mom, do you feel like having this for supper?" And she's like, "Hey, go for it," or whatever. And I'd try to make it. And if it didn't work, hey, at least I got in the kitchen and did something. Um, I do that. Like, I love cooking now. Like, it's something that over the past couple of years, like the past 2 years, I've really kind of taken a real big liking to, and I'm quite passionate about it now. Um, the other thing, is just my music, because music can be some of the most like liberating, freeing, like, just to get your mind off of everything, or even if you're really having a shitty day and you just want to put on some like really like heavy metal or rock music or something, just to kind of like take that aggression kind of out of you. Music has been one of the biggest like things for me, and it it's it's definitely a big help for a lot of people, I think, because a lot of people I've talked to that I know that are either dealing with, you know, mental health issues, or they're, you know, just not feeling it. I'll be like, so like, what do you listen to for music? We'll get talking about music. We don't even have to listen to it. We could talk about music for like an hour and just feel
Yes.
great afterwards.
Yeah.
Just feels good to do that. And then the other thing I started to listen to a lot more kind of like motivational, inspirational speakers. There's one fella, I read his book. I got it from my mom. It's basically it's like an autobiography or like a book that the guy who killed Osama bin Laden, his book.
Okay.
But I read the book, but then he's also a very good speaker because he was a Navy SEAL. A lot of the things he learned through like being a SEAL can apply to just normal life. They're not,
Right.
you know, you think about trying to be calm and all that stuff. It doesn't always have to be in a stressful situation. It could be an everyday thing, like, you know, on the road, you know, with how drivers can be. Just instead of getting all upset when someone cuts you off, just be like, hey, cool, chill, like relax. Um, One of the biggest points that I try to live by and remember now, and it was him. His name's Rob O'Neill. His one of his probably most what's a good word for it? Touching, I guess, phrases, quotes. It's stress is a choice. It's a bag of bricks that you can pick up in the morning when you get out of bed, carry it around with you all day, make everyone else miserable, make everyone else stressed out, come home, set it down, go back to bed, and everything just basically made your day terrible. Or you can leave it there, forget about stress, go about your day, and have a great day. And I try to think about that every day because I don't worry about things anymore and I don't stress about things anymore. It's not that I don't think about something. Like if it was something that was serious that, you know, is coming up and it's like, okay, how should I prepare for this kind of thing? Instead of worrying about it and stressing and be like, oh my God, like freaking out about it. It's just, hey, don't worry about it. What happens, happens. Prepare for it. If you're prepared, you're going to be cool. Like just chill. Don't take anything too like, you know, serious. Don't deal with it until it happens. That's where I think a lot of people find their stress is
Right.
they worry about things and they overthink things too much, thinking what if I do this? What if I do this? What can I do? Like just clear your brain of it, and until it happens, don't think about it.
Hmm.
Be aware of it, but don't think about it because you're going to get stressed out and then something else is going to happen. You're going to forget to do this and then something else is going to go wrong. Just if you mess something up or something doesn't go right, move on. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it because
Do
the
better
more you're
next
going
time.
to, exactly, because the more you stress about it or think about it, you're going to keep thinking about that, what you did wrong, and then you're probably going to mess something else up. And then it's just going to be
Yeah.
twice as bad. So it's like, you know, snowball, but just
Yeah.
if you don't worry about anything, don't stress about anything, it makes life so much easier. And if you think of
Yes.
stress as a choice, you can be set for life and you're never going to really be super like stressed out, like worried, not sleeping about it kind of deal. If you can just keep it cool and you'll be fine kind of deal. And that's one of the biggest things that kind of got me through everything, not just treatment alone, but you know, having a bad day or, you know, when I was kind of at a low point, I'd watch one of his speeches and like I'd hear that or just something else that you can relate to everyday life, and it made things so much easier.
Did y- did your perspective um did your perspective on life sort of change in that way where things that seemed important before kind of seemed less important?
Yeah, things that I would not that I would still stress about them before. I've never really been someone that worries about things, but things that I would have more in the front of my mind that I knew I couldn't control or that were going to happen anyway, those things kind of take a back seat now.
Yeah.
I think about more things that I can control, things that I know that are going to happen, but I kind of I'm ready for them. It's not like
Hmm.
I have to keep thinking about it, thinking what's going to happen. I just deal with it when it happens. It's not like I have to, be thinking about, oh, what should I do if this happens? It's what do I do now? I try to live more kind of in the moment, but still be aware of things that have happened or that are going to happen.
Hmm.
Um, because if you live, too much in the past or too much in the future, you're missing out on what's around you right now,
Yeah.
and then you get caught up in the things that are going to happen or that have happened, and you get too caught up in those, and then you just kind of lose yourself.
It, I think like a lot of times when something, very serious happens, like a sickness or like death or
Hmm.
a tragedy or something, I think often it can give people clarity onto what's really important.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned, and like a lot of people have said that too, where it's like it kind of gives you clarity of like what's really going on. It's like, life is very temporary. It's not guaranteed. And it's like all these things that we're like so
Yeah.
stressed out about, it just kind of, when you really understand it, you're like, this is this is nothing
Yeah, exactly.
in the grand scheme of it.
Yeah, big time. Like now that my mom and I have talked about it, where she said in like, let's say even a year or 2 years, I'll look back on, this past 2 years as like, hey, that was like a blip in, the how many years that I've already been here. Like in 2 years, I'll be like either, 24, 25. Um, I'll look back and say, hey, yeah, I was 19, 20, 21 when I had cancer, but it's like, hey, look at me now. Like it's gone. I'm never going to have to deal with it again. That was an experience
Yeah.
and something that gave me a lot more life experience, not just an experience of, what it's like to have something like cancer,
Yeah.
but it definitely kind of thickens your skin a little bit
Yeah.
going through something like that, because you're like, hey, now it's like you go through something that serious and that draining, you feel like you can do anything really. Um,
The minuscule stuff
that's
doesn't seem as big anymore.
yeah, everything kind of your like you said, kind of your perspectives and things shift. Um, Big things turn into smaller things, and things that you might not have thought were as important in the past are like the big things you should be focusing on.
Hmm.
um because some people kind of lose that. They'll get so caught up in something, let's say like work and school and all that stuff, they kind of forget what's important, like friends, family, you know making yourself happy, because that was one thing before I got sick, not that I was bad at, I just never took a lot of me time.
Right.
I was kind of that. I still kind of am, but I like to be a people pleaser. I like to make
Yeah.
sure other people feel good and are happy before I look at myself. So I was always, going with friends and trying to. I kind of burnt myself out, like mentally. Um, when I would try to do that, I would try to make everyone else happy, make sure everyone feels good, make sure everyone else is set. Then I would kind of look at myself. But at that point, I was just too tired to look at myself. So I
Yeah.
just kind of forgot about it. And then I would start to forget things, and like I wouldn't pay attention to things as close. Um, but now, not even now, but over the past 2 years, I've kind of developed it and thought about it more and looked at it from more of an outside point of view, like a third person point of view, where it's like, if I don't take care of myself first, I'm not going to be able to take care of others.
Yes.
Where I sometimes, as much as I would love to go and hang out with my friends or go and do something that's, really social and trying to make everyone else happy, I just can't. I need to take a me day to recharge my batteries, kind of get myself right again, and then I'm good to go for another little while. I never took really a me day or me time,
Yeah,
but now I'm definitely more aware of when I kind of need to sit down and just chill and recharge.
right. Yeah, man, I think that's super important. And it's a topic that's kind of come up on this podcast a lot too. It's like you can't pour from an empty cup,
Exactly.
so you got to fill up your own cup, and and then that's, as a trainer, that's what I um try to help my clients with as well too, is like you got to take care of your own health first, and that includes your mental health, and then you can give so much more
Oh, definitely.
after.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah, it's definitely something I think that needs to be um, more kind of brought into a spotlight,
Yeah,
because a lot of people are like just so focused on trying to please everyone and make everyone, you know, feel good and everything, that they they do it for too long, and then they don't know. Sometimes it's almost like you don't know how, because I've done it where I almost don't know how to kind of, refill my cup or recharge my batteries,
yeah,
because I've just, and there's nothing left to, charge it with, or like to
yeah.
recharge. So knowing your limits is definitely a big part of it.
It's like it's getting to know yourself. I think, like, um this happened when you were 19. I mean, it's super super young. You don't really know. I mean, you think you're old at the time, but you're just you're flying by the seat of your pants,
I know, eh?
and you like um it takes time to figure these things out. You have to spend time with yourself, and understand, like, okay, like I've had too much of this. I need to, like, take some time for myself, and, like, okay, how do I recharge, and what do I need
Hmm.
to do now, and who are the people that I need to hang out with, and what are the things I need to do? Do I need to read a book? Do I need to go for a walk? Do I need to just relax? Do I need to what do I need to do, right? So
Yeah.
it's like figuring all those things out, because I don't know that it's the exact same for everybody, but
Hmm.
um like those, I think the kind of activities are going to be somewhat similar.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a really good point that you made too, when you said that, I don't know if it's going to be the same for everyone, because everyone's experience through anything is going to be, unique, tailored to themselves. Kind of, no one's ever going to have the exact same kind of process through everything. Like, for someone, there's someone I know that they have pretty much the same thing I've got, like that I had, same kind of cancer, and their experience has been completely different from mine. When they first went into the hospital, they were feel like they caught it early enough that they were still in really good shape. They didn't have, like, their counts and stuff weren't also like as dangerously low as mine. They didn't have the lung problem. Like, they were good in the hospital, but then they had more problems later on down the line in treatment, where I kind of had the opposite.
Yeah,
Um, so everyone's experience is definitely unique and different, and that's a really good point that you made, because everyone, I think, thinks at some point, you know if you've got the same disease or the same whatever, that it's going to be the same for everyone. In a sense it is, because yeah, it's probably going to be similar medically,
hmm,
but to your own physical, mental, everything, like your, spiritual health, even, like, everything can be different for someone. Someone might have really good mental health, where someone else might not, and be really having a tough time with it. And that's where, you know someone that is dealing with it really positively and really well could be kind of that beacon, I guess, for someone who's not taking it as well. And that's kind of what I hope now I can do for someone, that if someone is, really struggling, or they need help with something, or, they just want to talk about anything, that someone that's, you know, they can relate to. That's what I hope I can kind of do now for someone if someone else down the line needed help, because I've had people there for me that did the same for me. So I'm just kind
Right.
of trying to pass the torch.
That's beautiful, man. Seems like a good place to end it. I just want to say thanks so much again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um,
my pleasure.
is there anything else you'd like to say before we end it off?
Uh, yeah, I guess just to close it out, just to anyone, you know, like I said, anyone who needs help, if you hear this and, you know, you're having kind of a shitty day or whatever, you're just not feeling it, or you just ever need someone to talk to, that's what your friends are for. There's someone like, you know, myself or Maddie that, you know, we're here for you. And mental health is a big thing that people need to be aware of. And um, that I'm definitely more of an advocate for now. Now that I've kind of gone through it myself and know what it's like. Um, no matter how positive or happy someone may seem, always check in on your buddies no matter what, because you don't know how they're feeling. That might just be something they're putting on just to, you know, so that they don't bring attention to themselves. A lot of people don't want to bring that attention to themselves. They don't want to make someone else worry about them.
Yeah.
But, you know, definitely check in on your friends. Like, people look at Robin Williams, great example. You would never have thought that man in his life would have been, you know, dealing with depression or thoughts of suicide, and look where he ended up, because no
Yeah.
one was checking in on him and he didn't want to bring the attention to himself. So all that's, I guess, kind of my last bit. Always check in on your friends and your family.
That's beautiful, man. Some wise words there. So I'm going to give you this. This is our sponsor, the PEI Sea Salt Company.
Oh,
So
right
we
on,
have
man.
4 different kind of sea salts here. So I'll deliver this to you in the near
Awesome.
future. It's awesome. You like to cook. You'll be able to cook with those.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And so that's the Prince Edward Island Sea Salt Company. 40% of all proceeds go to mental health programming here at PEI.
Awesome.
So everybody go definitely check them out. And I just want to say
Definitely.
thanks so much, Jacob, for coming on again.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Maddie. It's been a pleasure.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Yes, you too.
Woo!